As a young girl, I always was enthralled with the news. I think it was my destiny to be working in this media and news world.
And Karoline Leavitt has become the youngest White House press secretary ever.
He's doing what's right for our country. He wants to restore wealth to the United States of America. And I've found that courage is contagious, and when you speak up and speak your mind about how you feel, it often inspires others around you to do the same.
What was the most pivotal moment for you where you felt like you really had to step up into your role?
After the first assassination attempt on the president's life, the whole world watched the former president almost lose his life by millimeter. I had just given birth to my child actually a few days prior, and that was a moment where I realized this is history.
Karoline Leavitt, welcome to Post Run High.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to be sitting down with you. I feel like this has been a long time in the making, and I'm just so excited. So Karoline and I are currently in Washington, D.C. We just went for a walk around the White House grounds, and now we are sitting here in the South Auditorium. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I am feeling excited to join you. I think what you do is amazing. It's different, it's cool, it's new, and happy to sit down with you.
Well, you are juggling a lot. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know that are watching or listening, Karoline is the press secretary of the United States. And I just have to add in that she is the youngest press secretary in history. You're also a new mom.
Yeah.
This show is centered around movement. What role does movement currently play in your life? Because I know you were an athlete growing up.
I was an athlete growing up. I played sports my entire life. I went to college on an athletic scholarship to play softball, and working out and fitness has always been a big part of my life. Unfortunately, with the demands of this job and new motherhood, fitness and my personal time has been kind of put on the back burner, but any moment I can to get out and to move, I do, especially now. My new favorite exercise is taking long power walks with my baby and pushing him in the stroller. And he loves to go out on walks. He's so observant. He loves to look at the trees and the birds. And now being in the city, he loves it. So that's kind of the movement in my life right now, is with my son and being outside and bringing him on long walks.
You grew up in New Hampshire. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and maybe what young Karoline was like?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in a small, tiny town in New Hampshire, very rural, working class, blue collar. My family owned small businesses in the town, an ice cream shop and a truck dealership, which my dad and family still run. And so it's just typical middle class America upbringing in a great town and community. I have two older brothers, so we were always outside playing and playing sports. And then I went to college in New Hampshire as well. And that's where I fell in love with politics. But growing up as a young girl, I always was enthralled with the news and would read the newspaper as a young child, wanted to watch TV and watch the news, which is not very typical for most young kids. And so I think it was my destiny to be working in this media and news world that I'm obviously now in.
I mean, you definitely seem like you are made for it. And I'm excited for everybody today to learn your story because it truly is so interesting. And I feel like for women listening, it's very empowering and motivational. It's interesting knowing that you grew up in a family that you said wasn't political, but you did always love reading the news.
Yes.
Do you think you always saw yourself going into politics, or when you were younger in high school, playing softball, playing sports, did you potentially see yourself pursuing a different career?
I saw myself pursuing a career in maybe broadcast journalism. In fact, my mom has home videos of my brothers and me pretending to be sports broadcasters and pretending to work for ESPN and sharing the news stories of the day on our little old home video camera. I'm like aging myself, but growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, right, you had the home video cameras, and so my mom still has those tapes, and I always, again, loved reading the newspaper, and I had a curiosity about the world and the world around me. So when I was in high school and then college, I pursued opportunities writing for the school newspaper, starting a broadcasting club. Like I was just always had a curiosity, an innate curiosity about the world and what was happening.
I think what's so interesting about you too is not only are you the youngest press secretary ever at 27, but at 25, you were the youngest nominee for congressional office in major party history. So growing up, were you always one of those kids that was hyper motivated?
Yes, I would say. And I grew up in a small business family that was entrepreneurial and worked really hard. I think that work ethic was just part of our household. And think it led me to where I am now.
When your parents were running the ice cream stand and the truck dealership, did you pick up shifts?
Oh, yes. My first job in life was scooping ice cream. And my mom, we hired a lot of my friends. So, my girlfriends and I, who are still my best friends to this day, would all work together, long days, long shifts, scooping ice cream in the summer sun. But it was some of my best memories from life and a lot of fun.
What would you say was your parents' parenting style?
Discipline was a reality in the household, but also a lot of love and support and pushing us to be the best that we could, but high expectations, right? Like my dad always had a saying growing up, the parents go to work and the kids go to school. We were not allowed to miss school, even if we didn't feel well. Like you get up and you go to school, and the parents get up and go to work. So it was an amazing childhood. And I'm very blessed to have parents who are still together. They've been married more than 35 years and, they had humble beginnings, but they've worked very hard and they're very supportive, of course, to this day of everything that I've done in my life thus far.
I mean, they must be so proud of you.
I think they are.
Hey, Runner Gang. If you guys are excited about today's conversation with Karoline, please give this video a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Your support goes a long way and it helps us get bigger and better guests like Karoline. With that said, let's get back into our conversation. Let's talk about you discovering your political spark. I loved hearing that you really came into yourself in college. Like college was a very pivotal time in your life, right?
Yeah, so I went on a softball scholarship, but quickly learned it was politics was the game that I was most interested in playing. And so I gave up the softball team after 2 seasons because I wanted to throw myself in as many academic opportunities as possible. I studied abroad in Italy, which was an amazing time of life. But I started the broadcasting club and I wrote for the school newspaper. I worked at the local news station in New Hampshire, WMUR TV, and did weekend shifts working in the newsroom. And I just tried to seek out every opportunity. And then I applied for the White House internship as well, which led me to working for President Trump in his first term here about 8 years ago or so, which is amazing to think how it's come full circle. But it was in college that I certainly learned. I enjoyed politics and enjoyed debating and enjoyed reading about different perspectives and really was fascinated by this entire political world.
When do you feel like in college you really found your voice? Because I feel like the hardest thing about being a college student is not only figuring out what you believe in, but then figuring out how to vocalize it. So let's talk about that coming of age for you.
Yeah, and certainly as a Republican and as a young conservative on college campuses, you are in the minority. It's just the reality of the age we live in. And so I feel as though it could be more difficult, especially for conservatives like myself, to have that courage to voice your opinion when you're in the minority. But I always just had the courage and felt very strongly about my views and opinions and wrote about them in the school newspaper, raised my hand in class and made it well known amongst the class and my peers. You just have to have courage. And I've found that courage is contagious. And when you speak up and speak your mind about how you feel, it often inspires others around you to do the same. And so I just did it.
When you first started writing articles for the newspaper and you started the broadcast club on campus, you were writing some bold political pieces. I wrote one of them down. One of the titles of your articles was Why Donald Trump Keeps on Winning. Outside of just that article, when you first published your first kind of opinion piece in the school newspaper or maybe spoke about it in the journalism in the broadcast club, were you nervous to press the submit button or were you excited to maybe get your ideas out there?
I was excited and enthusiastic about it. I don't recall being nervous. Maybe I was at the time, but I felt strongly about those opinions.
Did you ever cause a stir on campus?
There were a few stirs.
Okay, give us the story.
There were a few controversies, and there were certainly professors that were very liberal and did not agree with me or the opinions that I held, and I made that, quite known. It's not an easy thing to do as, again, a young conservative on campus, but I did it.
How did your peers initially react, and maybe how did your teammates react?
Always with positivity. I never had any bad encounters or anything like that.
You went on to intern for Trump during his first term. How did you get the internship?
I literally applied on whitehouse.gov.
I love it.
and filled out the application. It was very long and lengthy. I frankly did not expect I would have been chosen. I was studying abroad in Rome, Italy, when I received the email from the White House saying I was accepted into the program for that following summer. I'll never forget, receiving that email and what a surprise it was. And of course, I enthusiastically said yes and moved to Washington several weeks later and took the internship, with my best foot forward and showed up early and stayed late. And then it led to a full-time job. So I finished my senior year of school and then moved back to Washington and was here as a full-time employee.
It's amazing. Do you remember walking into the White House on your first day of that internship?
I do. I do remember exactly where I was. I remember the red blazer that I wore. I recently gave it up because she was so old and tired. But I do remember that first day and feeling like, wow, this is amazing that I'm, working at the White House.
What was it about President Trump that you were so inspired by in those early years? Was there a message of his that you really resonated with that you were like, I want to work for him?
Yeah, the America First message, which continues to be his core principle to this very day. And that resonated with me again growing up in a, middle class family who worked very hard. There's a saying called the forgotten men and women, which I think is very real in our country. A lot of people feel left behind by the political establishment, and President Trump was the first politician in a very long time to really speak to the heart of those men and women, many of whom I grew up with. And that was my worldview and perspective. And his message really resonated with me from initially his 2016 campaign, as you pointed out from my op ed at that time, which led me to want to work here.
And you went from interning at the White House to then, as you said, getting offered a full time job.
Yeah.
When you were working under the former White House press secretary, Kayleigh, did you ever think to yourself, this is a job I could see myself doing?
Gosh, I'm sure I did. I was just in the moment in that job trying to do my best and support her in the role. And it was, really imperative for me to have that experience. Looking back now in hindsight, how critical it was to come in here in this term on the first day, being the press secretary, understanding how the office works and what the staff should look like. That institutional knowledge that I came in with was so critical. And I'm very grateful for that experience.
It is so important to have that foundational kind of background. And it's fun now knowing, I'm sure, with some of the people that you work with, kind of
Yeah.
looking at them and being like, this could be you one day. So,
Yes,
like, soak it all
absolutely.
in.
Right, for
Right.
sure.
What do you think is one thing that you learned from Kayleigh's time and your time working with Kayleigh?
Yeah, preparation is key. She prepared a lot. I know I've spoken to many of my predecessors in this role who told me preparation is everything, and it absolutely is. I mean, on briefing days, every day I'm here very early, reading the news, absorbing it from every newspaper. Literally, I read the physical newspaper. I read, obviously, whatever's popping online, and then watching all of the cable networks to get a full understanding of what the news cycle is for the day. And then sometimes I feel like an internal investigative reporter. I go to all of the policy experts in the building and the president himself to understand his feeling on it, what the administration is saying, what are we doing about the particular news of the day, and how I can put my best foot forward to message it on behalf of this building.
Do you feel like, as a press secretary, like most of your day to day is spent learning and understanding what's going on and figuring out the right ways to word things when you're in the briefing room?
Definitely. My day is being a sponge and absorbing as much knowledge and information as I can. And the news cycle changes not just every day, but every hour. There are new stories popping and breaking, and we are the White House. We have to respond to everything across the country. And so it's a lot to absorb, and it's a new challenge every day. You never know what the next day will bring.
It's an exciting job in that way, and you're showing that you can thrive in chaos. Absolutely, right? It's
Yes.
like there's always so much going on, new things happening every single day. I agree. So I'm curious about this because you went from working under Kayleigh to then running your congressional campaign where you had to become your own voice,
Right.
right? What was it like going from being on the communications team to then being your own voice? Like, was that a pivot for you? Did you feel like it was a big leap?
Yeah, and in many ways, it was almost more difficult being my own voice because when you are a candidate yourself or your name is on the ballot, you have to make decisions about what you want to say. What do your stakeholders want you to say? What does your family believe? What do your constituents want and need? What does the media expect that you're going to say? And so there's a lot of different perspectives you have to take into account, then make a decision and then message it. Whereas now, as the spokesperson for the president, he's the decision maker, and I'm just here to effectuate that message and to drive it home. And so, in many ways, it's actually easier to be a spokesperson for someone else than for yourself. And I've found that to be a quite interesting trajectory, if you will, from going from running for Congress myself to now working on behalf of another individual.
But I do feel like doing both gives you confidence in a way that somebody that hasn't had that experience speaking for themselves, like,
Yeah.
wouldn't have.
It was critical experience, and I'm so glad I did it, and I learned so much about myself and politics as well, and I don't regret the experience at all. And in many ways, I'm grateful that I lost the election because it shut that door, but it opened this one. And I probably wouldn't be sitting here if not for that election and the way it turned out.
Right. I mean, it is so true. Like when one door closes and another
For
door
sure.
opens. During that time, I'm sure it was your first time dealing with press, right? And people having positive and negative views on you. So it's kind of an opportunity to thicken your skin before
Yeah.
you're on this now massive stage
For
at the White
sure.
House.
Yes. You gotta just learn how to block it out and not care what people think or say about you. You're always going to have someone who dislikes you no matter what you do. So I think just staying authentic to yourself and staying grounded is so important. And I definitely learned that firsthand on the campaign trail.
As a press secretary, or even, when you were in the running, how did your inner circle change? How do you decide who is kind of a safe space for you? Does it become much smaller or?
In many ways, I've always had a smaller, close circle, if you will. My best friends are still my best friends from high school. I have very close friends and confidants here at the White House, my colleagues, and we're very blessed to have an amazing team. Many of us worked on the president's campaign together. So when he won, we all came in. And so we have close relationships and bonds, which is very important and also quite rare in this city to have colleagues who you truly like and want to be with every day. And I'm very grateful to have that here at the White House. But of course, now my whole life has changed being a wife and a mother. And so my family is my rock and who I spend the most of my time with as life progresses. That's the change of life. And it's a beautiful season right now.
It is so nice having that family as your backbone, right? And, the thing that you get to go home to
Definitely.
and grounding you throughout
It's
everything.
everything. Yeah.
Okay, so you went from your congressional campaign trail to then being the lead of Trump's communication team for his 2024 campaign. Did that feel like a natural progression for you? And how did you end up kind of getting that
Yeah.
role?
So I was the national press secretary on the campaign, and I was hired initially by actually who's now my current boss, Taylor Budowich. He's our deputy chief of staff here at the White House, and he's amazing and a good friend. And he hired me to start helping the president's campaign effort. And it was an incredible experience and amazing traveling around the country, going to rallies, and speaking on behalf of the president through amazing times and also some very dark times. I was with him in a courthouse when he was railed against. I was with him through some trials and tribulations and a lot of adversity, but the president prevailed, and now here we are.
And you were doing it while pregnant, which is
Yeah.
the wildest thing to me. What was the most pivotal moment for you where you felt like you really had to step up into your role?
There were so many moments, but definitely after the first assassination attempt on the president's life in Butler, Pennsylvania, which was just a life-changing moment, a historic moment. The whole world watched the former president and at that time possibly the future president almost lose his life by millimeter. And I had just given birth to my child actually a few days prior when I watched it on television. And that was a moment where I realized this is history. This is a crazy, pivotal time in our nation's history. And when you see something like that for someone you work for, and it impacted, my colleagues and the whole campaign and the whole country, of course, was shook by that image of the president standing up, blood dripping down his face, saying, fight, fight, fight. No matter how you feel about Donald Trump, that is an iconic, historic, solemn moment in our nation's history. And that was very, very impactful, I think, for all of us on the campaign. And it kind of made us all pull ourselves up from our bootstraps and want to work even harder and fight even harder to win. And it really created a camaraderie amongst the campaign about what we were up against and how critical it was to win the election.
How soon after giving birth did you go back to work?
Several days, which I wasn't expecting, but in light of what had happened to the president, I almost felt a responsibility to go back to work and back on television. So I had a studio set up in my home, so I was able to easily go downstairs and do a quick TV hit, and then, of course, attend to my child. And then went back to the office as soon as I could and brought my baby to the office with me. He was always with me throughout the entire duration of the campaign and just made it work.
Talk about a moment in time for your son as
Yeah.
well, right? Spending his first days on the campaign
Yeah.
trail at the White House. I mean,
And he has no idea what's going on. He's just happy to be with his mom and dad. And
right.
someday I hope he'll look back at all of these photos of him and his mom and he'll be very proud.
What's so cool about you and about that story and your July 2024 is that you really are showing women that you can have a rigorous job and you can also be a great mom,
Yeah.
and you can do both. And I think it's so important for people to be able to see for you during that time, like how did you manage? I know you're bringing your baby to work, but that can be incredibly challenging, right?
Yeah.
When sometimes the work almost has to take priority
Mhm.
in a way, especially when it's like you're doing a service for the United
Yeah.
States.
It's an incredible challenge, and it's something I still face to this very day. Having to deal with that balance of wanting to be the best you can in your job and being the best mother that you possibly can as well. And it takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of prioritization of time. And sometimes it means saying no to commitments because you have to be home for bedtime, and that's okay. And having a good support system is so incredibly important. It's certainly a challenge. And again, I'm not perfect at it. It's something I'm dealing with every day.
But you do make it look so easy. So I'm
Thanks.
curious, like, I mean, your outfit, you always look great. The
Oh,
outfits are
thanks.
incredible. Seriously, like you're making it look so effortless. I had one of my family friends was like, ask her how she never looks tired.
Uh,
And I was like, I don't know if I should ask her that because she's definitely tired, right?
Very
And
tired.
she's gonna say, I'm very, very tired.
Yeah.
After work, like what does your day look like? Are you able to turn off ever or
I try to at night. I go home and immediately go into mom mode, and we do bedtime as a family, eat dinner as a family, bath time, book reading, and, put the baby down. And then I try to take time after that for myself to, do what I need to do to get a good night's sleep. And I do try to prioritize sleep because it's critical to
yeah.
focus and getting up and ready. And then wake up early and the next day begins.
Right. And also like be a mom, but also squeeze in time to be with your
I
husband.
know.
What does date
Yes.
night look like as the press secretary of the United States?
They're few, yeah, they're few and far between.
yeah.
We recently had one at the Kennedy Center. We went to a show, we went to dinner after, and it was amazing. But date nights often are including our baby right now. We just love being together as a family, the three of us. It's our safe place, our happy place. And so we spend a lot of time with the three of us at home or going out for walks and going out to dinner as well.
That makes so much sense. I feel like those are the moments you look forward to the most, especially
Yes.
as a new mom.
Yes. And just savor every second.
As we've said multiple times during this interview, you are the youngest press secretary in US history. It's so wild that you are not only doing one of the hardest jobs, but you are also making history while doing it. What does that mean to you? Like when people say that to you, what feeling does it evoke?
When you're in the moment in something, I think it's a little bit hard to digest. So I'm not so sure that I have, to be honest. I'm just trying to do my best every day, putting my best foot forward and executing on the job that I have. And it's a great responsibility. I'm certainly aware of that and I take it very seriously. And so we just keep working hard and keep chugging.
Do you remember getting the call from the president to be his
Yes.
press
Yeah,
secretary?
of
Where
course.
were you? What's the story?
I was in our home in New Hampshire and we had a phone conversation and he had told me in that conversation, you're going to be my White House spokesperson. I'm sure of it. Let's make it happen. This was about a week after the election. And so I obviously said thank you and yes, called my family to let them know. And then a statement went out a few hours later. And in that moment, it was definitely life changing for sure.
Everybody sees your podium moments, but what is something behind the scenes that you wish you could show people?
It's a good question. I think our incredibly cordial relationships with the media. It's hostile sometimes, and we make it known when we disagree with their reporting or when there are inaccuracies. And I think we should to hold the media accountable and make sure that they're accurately representing the administration and pushing the truth out there. But we also have good working relationships with them. We try to work with them in good faith and we expect them to do the same. And so I think, people who see the briefings may not understand that the media are like our colleagues. We work with them on a day to day basis to shape stories on behalf of the president.
When people are just viewing the briefings, they're like, everybody's fighting, everybody's screaming. But at the same time, yeah, it's like you're just people. You're all here at the White House in
Right.
DC to do your
Yeah,
jobs.
exactly.
So I've interviewed Dana Perino, and one of the things that we were talking about was advice that she's gotten and received from past press secretaries. So I'm curious for you, like, what is the best advice you received before stepping into the role?
Some of the best advice I received was from Dana, who's one of my predecessors and has become a mentor. And she's just an amazing, lovely person. And she said there's no shortcut for preparation. And we talked a lot about preparation before I stepped into the role and what it looked like for her. And I've emulated some of those strategies in terms of reading everything and having meetings with policy staff and having meetings with my team to really get a full grasp on the news cycle before I take the podium.
Outside of preparation for upcoming press secretaries or people that, will be in the role after you, what is something that you would say to them?
Oh gosh. Ask me that question in 4 years. I
Yeah.
don't know yet. I'm still in the thick of it, still learning and trying to do my best. But I think again, the best advice I can give is you gotta be on top of the news cycle and have a close relationship with the president or the principal that you're speaking on behalf. You have to get inside their head and understand their thinking in order to most accurately articulate what they want you to say and what the administration and the White House believe. You gotta really know the person you're speaking on behalf of. You have to really understand how they think and feel.
What does your relationship with President Trump look like?
It's great. He's a great boss to work for. He's fun. He's hilarious. One of the funniest people I've ever met. He has a great sense of humor and he's incredibly kind and he's a great listener. And I'm very honored to work for him.
I feel like one story that I heard that I loved was after the first attempted assassination, didn't he call you? And
Yes.
instead of talking about what had just happened to you, he called you and was
Yes. Yeah, he
like, how's your
did.
baby?
Yeah. Yeah. Around that time, after the assassination attempt, and it was the midst of the Republican convention. So he was incredibly busy. I had obviously just had my son, and he and the first lady called to make sure I was okay and to talk about the baby. And he was incredibly kind and gracious and continues to be to this day. And something most people may not realize about the president is he has not just hired me as a young working mom, but there are tons of working moms and dads in the West Wing and at the White House, and he empowers us to do both. And I think that's quite admirable for the President of the United States to encourage working families so much.
Final question for you is knowing what you know now, what is something that you would tell your younger self?
Oh boy, just keep going, just keep working.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Caroline. This was seriously amazing.
Yes, thank you for having me.